Hi there. Welcome back to Haunting Vales. This is your host, Noah. Today we are going to talk about Annabelle doll, which was vanished from museum, and going to explain it. So make sure to watch whole video and don't forget to like and subscribe. They said the Annabelle doll never moved on her own, that the stories surrounding her were nothing more than urban legends spun from fear and superstition. For decades, the doll remained sealed inside a double-pane glass case at the Warren Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut, its wood frame blessed regularly by Catholic priests, its edges lined with sacred inscriptions designed to contain the entity within. The warnings were clear and absolute. Do not touch the glass, do not challenge the doll, and do not speak its name with malice or mockery. The Warrens, famed paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine, had acquired the doll in the 1970s after a young nurse reported strange phenomena in her apartment. The doll, originally a Raggedy Ann, had supposedly moved from room to room, changed positions on its own, and left eerie, handwritten notes asking for help. Mediums claimed it was possessed not by a child's spirit as first believed, but by a demonic force pretending to be one. The Warrens removed it, locked it away, and warned the world it must never be released. But in 2020, something unimaginable happened. The museum had been closed due to zoning violations, and maintenance of its spiritual protections had reportedly lapsed. Then one night, without any sign of forced entry or natural disaster, the case was found shattered from the inside. The glass lay in jagged shards on the museum floor, the room eerily untouched otherwise, no sign of a break-in, no alarms triggered, no power outages recorded in the town, just silence and an empty pedestal. The Annabelle doll had vanished. Security footage offered little explanation. One camera showed the case intact at 2:36 a.m. At 2:38, the screen flickered with static. By 2:40, the case was broken, and the cheap doll was gone. No motion detected, no sound recorded, no explanation. Initial reports were dismissed by mainstream outlets. Journalists called it a hoax or publicity stunt. Social media exploded with memes and sarcastic commentary, but behind the online hysteria, a more sinister pattern began to emerge. Paranormal investigators started receiving frantic messages from locals in Monroe and surrounding counties, strange sightings, unexplained noises, objects moving on their own, and dreams plagued by a red-haired doll with button eyes and stitched limbs. In one case, a teenage girl in Trumbull claimed to see the doll sitting on her bedroom chair at 3:12 a.m. each night. Her parents dismissed it until they found her curled in the corner one morning, claw marks etched into her arms. She had no memory of hurting herself. Another report surfaced from a man in New Haven, a late-night delivery driver who swerved off the road near Route 34. He told police he saw a child standing in the middle of the highway. When questioned, he insisted it wasn't a person. It was the doll. He said it turned its head toward him as he approached. The dashcam footage mysteriously glitched during the exact timestamp. No child or doll was found at the scene, but the man was hospitalized for psychological trauma and never returned to work. The Warrens' archives, now in partial custody of a private foundation, revealed that Annabelle was believed to be more than just a possessed object. In rare internal memos, Ed Warren had written that the entity attached to the doll was not merely anchored by the object, it uses it as a mouthpiece, a lure, a Trojan horse. He described how it fed off attention and fear, how the more people became aware of the legend, the stronger the connection between our world and whatever existed beyond. That's why they kept it isolated and heavily warded, not to protect the doll, but to protect us from it. One ex-employee of the museum who requested anonymity claimed that the wards had not been maintained since the closure. The last blessing was in early 2019, she said. After that, the building sat unused. The protections faded. If anything was still inside that case, well, it had time to grow hungry. 2 weeks after the escape, a live stream by a popular paranormal channel titled Ghost Circuit went viral for all the wrong reasons. The host had travelled to the wooded outskirts of Monroe to taunt the spirit of Annabelle and summon her out. He brought a thrift store Raggedy Ann doll as a joke, filmed himself mocking the legend, even dared the real doll to come out and play. During the final 3 minutes of the stream, viewers noted something deeply disturbing. A figure appeared behind the host, small, childlike, unmoving. Its presence was subtle at first, just a shadow. But as he continued talking, the figure slowly tilted its head. The stream abruptly cut out with a loud crash. Authorities were alerted, but the host was never found. His equipment, including his camera and phone, were recovered in the woods, each device fried beyond recovery, as if exposed to high-voltage current. Nearby trees showed signs of burn damage, and the earth around them smelled like scorched hair and mildew. The doll he had brought was discovered weeks later, placed upright on a bench outside the museum gates, clean and dry, despite a recent storm. The deeper researchers dug into the case, the more unsettling the patterns became. Most incidents occurred between 2 and 4 a.m., the traditional devil's hour. Victims frequently described recurring dreams or hallucinations involving a female childlike figure with limp arms and a head that snapped to face them without. Warning: in almost every case, witnesses claimed to hear scratching, on doors, on windows, sometimes from inside their walls. One police officer in Bridgeport was called to a domestic disturbance, only to find the house empty. No occupants, no intruders. Just a television left on in a dark room, playing static. As he approached to turn it off, the screen briefly displayed the face of the doll, wide-eyed, unblinking. He dropped his flashlight and ran from the home. His body cam footage later showed him whispering, "Don't look at her eyes," over and over, though he had no recollection of saying it. And then there were the fires. Several unexplained house fires erupted across the Northeast in the months following Annabelle's disappearance. In each case, arson was ruled out. The fires started without a clear ignition source. Survivors described the scent of burning cloth and saw small handprints on soot-covered walls. In one tragic incident in Vermont, a mother and child died in their sleep. Firefighters found the remains of what appeared to be a child's doll on the mattress, except the materials didn't match any known toy manufacturer. Its fabric was hand-stitched, its features distorted. It melted beyond recognition before samples could be preserved. But one fireman, a 20-year veteran, later resigned after claiming he saw the doll move before it disintegrated. The Catholic Church remained silent officially, but leaked documents from a Vatican-affiliated demonology research group revealed internal discussions about a vessel breach and the possibility of a parasitic entity operating freely through belief networks. One translated report warned, when the vessel is no longer contained, it becomes itinerant, not limited by location, but by awareness. Every invocation, every mention, every whispered curiosity becomes an open door. Paranormal researchers began to believe that the doll didn't need to be physically present anymore. It could manifest through shared belief, digital sightings, dreams, spoken legends. Some even suggested that watching footage of the doll could trigger a psychic connection. That made the situation infinitely more dangerous. Because now, the more viral the story became, the more access the entity gained. Police departments stopped logging reports involving the doll. Journalists were discouraged from publishing follow-up stories, and yet the sightings continued. In a Chicago suburb, a school teacher found a crude drawing of the doll in a student's desk. The child said She had never seen it before. A week later, she was hospitalized for seizures and night terrors. In Florida, a family reported hearing laughter on their baby monitor at 3:07 a.m., a low, crackling sound that morphed into a girl's voice singing an old nursery rhyme. Their infant was found unharmed but surrounded by shredded pieces of a stuffed animal no one recognized. All attempts to trace the doll's movements failed. GPS trackers left in recovered replicas went offline. Security systems glitched. Cameras stopped recording. It was as if the entity could manipulate electricity and perception itself. And so the legend of Annabelle, once confined to a single glass case in a hidden corner of a museum, had escaped into the world, not as a doll, but as a thought, a shape in the dark, a suggestion buried in nightmares and radio static and flickering live streams. She no longer needed to be seen to be feared. Every story shared, every image reposted, every whisper of her name fed her reach. The horror wasn't in what she did, it was in the possibility that she could be anywhere, in your attic, in your reflection, behind your television screen, waiting for you to believe just enough to let her through. In the dim light of the Warren Occult Museum, silence had always carried weight, thick, suffocating, and cold. Every artifact encased behind thick glass had a story, and none more disturbing than the ragged, hollow-eyed doll resting behind Tsichik's double-sealed, blessed enclosure. She was known by one name whispered in caution, curiosity, and dread: Annabelle. For years the case stood untouched, guarded by prayers, salt lines, and warnings, ignored only by the foolish. People had come and gone, mocking her legend, laughing at the wooden plaque that read, "Do not touch, do not taunt." But then the night came when the mocking stopped. There was no storm, no forced entry, no clamor of intruders, only shattered glass on the cold floor and the suffocating absence of the doll. Surveillance cameras flickered, capturing a final frame, the doll behind the glass, before darkness swallowed everything. No motion detected, no alarm tripped. When the lights returned, she was gone. And the museum fell silent, not with confusion, but with fear, because those who had sealed her knew, if she was no longer bound, something ancient had awakened. Within hours, whispers turned to screams. News outlets dismissed it as a hoax, a viral stunt. But those who scoffed stopped laughing when the dead began whispering. A teenage boy in Monroe woke to find his pet rabbit skinned on his doorstep, its eyes missing, replaced by red thread. He'd spent the night watching YouTube videos mocking the doll. He vanished 3 days later. Only the sound of scraping wood was heard inside his room, along with an eerie nursery rhyme looped backwards on his Bluetooth speaker. His parents swore the door never opened. Investigators found no signs of entry, just claw marks on the inside of his window and strands of hair that didn't match anyone in the house. Weeks passed, and with each one, another strange incident surfaced. In Connecticut, a delivery driver swerved off the road after claiming to see a doll in the middle of the highway at 3:04 a.m. He said she turned her head. Authorities found him trembling, muttering incoherently, his dashboard cam wiped clean, except for static and one frozen frame, a ragged shape with red-stained hands standing in the road. The man was institutionalized hours later, diagnosed with acute psychosis. Then came the case of the live streamer, known online as Ghost Circuit. He toured abandoned sites near the Warren Museum, ridiculing the legends. "Come get me, demon girl," he joked, holding up a thrift store doll. The stream cut mid-laugh. Viewers reviewing the footage caught 3 seconds of movement behind him, something small with tangled hair standing motionless until it tilted its head and vanished as the screen went black. His body was never found. Only a blood-smeared phone and the words, "She saw me," scrawled across the inside of his van's windshield, in reverse. Panic crept beneath the surface of public discourse. Reddit threads speculated, TikToks went viral, but real investigators, those who knew of the Warrens, went dark. Files vanished. One by one, people connected to the doll's original containment began disappearing. Paranormal researcher Tessa Monroe was one of the last to speak. She'd visited the museum days before the disappearance and claimed something felt wrong. "It was like being watched from inside the case," she said. Her dreams twisted into nightmares where Annabelle climbed onto her bed, eyes lifeless, limbs jerking like a puppet. She tried salt, sage, even calling a priest. But hours after reporting a foul, burning smell in her apartment, her building caught fire. Firefighters found no cause, only a melted mattress spring and a single handprint on the soot-covered wall, small, delicate, and clawed. Only fragments of her body were recovered. The coroner's report described her remains as partially fused with synthetic fibers and scorched wood. No DNA evidence of any intruder. Then came the text message, preserved in digital memory. "She's not a doll. She's something else. If she finds you, don't speak." That same night, the original museum caretaker died in his sleep. Eyes wide open, veins darkened, an expression frozen in terror. The autopsy revealed no cause of death. His phone played a lullaby on repeat, though no music file was ever found on the device. The track's metadata listed the composer as A.M. Bell. His home security system glitched during the night. The only frame recovered showed the doll on his porch, alone, unmoving, watching. People thought it was fear-mongering. Others believed it was viral marketing. But the deaths continued. One woman found a doll on her balcony, staring through her window, though she lived on the 20th floor. A boy in Chicago refused to sleep, saying, "The puppet girl," whispered under his bed. He was found catatonic, his fingernails missing, stuffed into the crawl space behind his closet. No signs of entry. The story evolved, but one truth became impossible to ignore. Annabelle was no longer bound to one location. She had become an idea, a contagion of belief. The more people feared, the more powerful she grew. And the more they spoke her name, the closer she came. No longer just a haunted object, she was now a traveling curse, a shadow wearing the skin of a toy. Paranormal scholars combed through old Warren's case files and found a chilling theory that Annabelle was never just a cursed doll. She was a conduit, yes, but also a lure. Something darker moved through her, something old, not demonic in the religious sense, but predatory. It didn't seek possession, it sought replication, infection. That's why the Warrens never destroyed her. They feared what was inside wasn't tethered to the doll, but merely using it. Once freed, it could latch onto new vessels. Not dolls. People. Especially the young. Especially those who believed. And belief was everywhere now. With every repost, every retelling, every late-night TikTok, the legend grew. One post claimed to see her blinking in the background of a popular influencer's video. The clip was removed. The influencer disappeared days later. The footage never resurfaced. It wasn't just a haunting, it was a migration. In the dark corners of the deep web, forums filled with users reporting the same thing. Dolls arriving at doorsteps, laughter in hallways, claw marks on mirrors. One post read, "She was in my house. I locked the doors. I burned the doll, but it's not the doll. She wore it like skin. She's still here." The post was deleted within minutes. No user history remained. Investigators tried to track it. IP address traced to a shut-down daycare in Rhode Island. Police found it abandoned, covered in soot and chalk drawings of a red-haired girl with button eyes and a stitched mouth. "She talks without moving," one drawing said. "She sees without looking." In a locked closet, they found toys arranged in a circle around a burned patch of floor. In the center, an old-fashioned Raggedy Ann doll. Stitched eyes, stiff limbs, and on its chest, in childlike scrawl, "You let me out." The files were sealed, the footage scrubbed, but the scent of burnt fabric and hair still lingered. The footage scrubbed, but the scent of burnt fabric and hair still lingered. Investigators sent in to sweep the daycare refused to speak publicly, but a leaked voice memo from one of the first responders survived in a private Discord server. There was something wrong with the dolls. Every one of them had missing eyes, stitched mouths, like they were silenced. And the silence didn't feel empty, it felt full, like something was listening through it. 2 weeks later, that responder took his own life, left no note, but his wife said he spent his last days muttering about a song only the dolls could sing. His laptop was found with the speakers melted. Police claimed overheating, but his browser had one tab open, a news article about the original Warren case. On the side banner was an ad, black background, white text, no image, just one sentence. "She is watching even now." No source, no company ID, nothing to trace. It was never cached again. From then on, strange reports began leaking into law enforcement from seemingly unconnected sources. A teacher in Delaware shut down a second-grade classroom after 5 students independently drew the same image. Annabelle, sitting at the front of the class, holding what looked like a child's vocal cords in her hands. When asked why they all drew that, they said in unison, "She wants us quiet." When local authorities brought in child psychologists, 2 of the doctors developed stress-related nosebleeds mid-session. One collapsed, whispering, "Not the eyes! Don't open her eyes!" That incident was never filed. Even more disturbing was the pattern that started forming. Each encounter, each new sighting, seemed to carry forward a trail of increasingly violent symptoms. First, it was scratches. Then it was burns. Then it was speech loss. Victims became withdrawn. Some stopped talking altogether, as if speaking triggered her arrival. Others were found with mouths forced shut, stitched with thread, glued, or worse. One case in Boston documented a young woman who woke up with her lips fused together. No cause could be found. No trauma to the tissue. It was like the skin itself had never parted. The ER staff removed it surgically. When they finally opened, her mouth, all she said was, "She's behind the mirror." They tested her for schizophrenia. Results came back clean. She disappeared a week later. Her apartment had only one clue, a series of fingerprints smeared across the bathroom mirror in red clay, child-sized, unmatched. Authorities tried to suppress these connections, but data always leaks. A private paranormal research group called the Veil Collective released a warning. This is not just a haunting, it's a viral haunting. It spreads through media, through imagery, through belief. Stop watching, stop reading, stop speaking the name. But the damage was done. The very act of warning was a form of spreading. That was the design. She didn't need to be summoned with blood or candles, just attention, awareness. The moment someone truly believed, just enough, that was the opening. That was the invitation. and she always accepted. In Arkansas, a church service was interrupted when every child in the front row began crying simultaneously, pointing at the pulpit and screaming, "She's on fire! She's on fire!" No one saw anything, but one by one their drawings later all depicted the same thing: a doll with red flames for hair and a smile made of broken teeth. The pastor, confused and shaken, went home that night and recorded a video statement. Before uploading, he reviewed the footage and stopped midway. Behind him, in the corner of the room, the doll appeared, just barely visible in the shadows. The footage never aired. He deleted his channel the next day and hasn't been seen since. Neighbors reported foul smells from his home and banging sounds that echoed long after the lights turned off. When police entered his home a week later, the power was dead, and every doll in his house, over 70 from his wife's antique collection, had been moved. Each one positioned to face the front door, each one with their heads turned unnaturally to the side. One had writing scrawled across its torso in ash, "Tell no one." They shut the case without explanation, but whispers continued. In a psychiatric facility in Pennsylvania, a patient in a catatonic state began repeating a rhyme for the first time in years. "She's in the walls, she's in the seams, she crawls inside your silent screams." The patient had no known history. With the Annabelle case, no internet access. When asked where she heard the rhyme, she screamed until blood burst from her ears. She died that night in her sleep, eyes sewn shut with her own hair. That was the turning point. Those still trying to investigate realized something irreversible had happened. Annabelle, if that was even still the right name, was no longer contained in story or box. She was now part of a system embedded in our media, our memories. Somewhere between folklore and entity, not just haunting places or people, but thoughts. She had become conceptual, haunting the mind through suggestion. Paranormal theorists had a term for it, an info-parasite, a thought form that grows stronger the more. People think about it like a meme that carries a spiritual virus. The more detailed the description, the more anchored she became. Every telling was a summoning, every whisper a breadcrumb. And the bread trail was global now. A popular horror podcast did a live episode titled Annabelle, Myth or Monster. The host joked that if the doll was real, he'd invite her to his house. Within 3 days, the podcast vanished from all streaming platforms. Fans tried to find the last episode, but it was scrubbed, not just removed, erased from metadata. Listeners who remembered the episode described hearing soft knocking in the background, increasing every 5 minutes. Some said they could hear a child humming between segments. One fan who downloaded the file before deletion reported his hard drive overheating and catching fire. The only thing that survived was a distorted MP3 clip that ended with the words, "She knows your voice now." The voice wasn't the host's, and it wasn't human. Across all these events, one pattern emerged. The longer someone engaged with content related to her, the closer she got. People reported dreams. Then objects moving. Then the doll appearing. Sometimes only in reflections. Sometimes in peripheral vision. But always closer. It wasn't long before schools banned discussion of her name. One high school in Maryland shut down its library after students found a page in an old book that simply read, "She's here." No author, no context, just that. Surveillance footage later showed books falling from shelves on their own, always landing on pages with blank, dolls drawn in pencil. One teacher was hospitalized for burns on her hands after trying to remove the book. She claimed the pages whispered when touched. Scientists, desperate to debunk the wave of panic, tried applying cognitive psychology to explain mass hysteria. But their team lead, Dr. Mark Gillen, disappeared before publishing their findings. His office was found locked from the inside, lights flickering, computer screen cracked from the inside out, a post-it note stuck to the monitor. "Her silence is louder than your logic." The case was closed, files sealed, and still sightings increased. In Brazil, a family's home burned down after their daughter brought home a thrift store doll that looked suspiciously like the one in question. She claimed the doll told her its name was Annabelle, with one N, spelled differently, but somehow the same. Her last drawing, taped to the fridge, showed her family asleep with red strings wrapped around their mouths. The doll stood at the foot of the bed, one finger raised to her sewn lips. The daughter's body was never found, only her dress, untouched by the flames, and a lock of synthetic hair melted into the floor. There was something unnatural about how the melted hair curled inward like it had tried to retreat from the fire. Investigators found no accelerant, no faulty wiring. The only burn pattern traced directly from the doll's position outward, like it had ignited the world around it, not the other way around. That was the last official attempt to trace her origins. Everything after became whispers, rumors, live streams that never finished. Survivors started to band together in secret forums that didn't last long. They'd get taken down, sometimes by moderators, sometimes just gone. One forum, called The Threaded Eyes, was wiped mid-posting. The last message ever uploaded read, "She's not in the doll is in her." From there, incidents became global. A photojournalist in Romania captured a strange image during a political protest. A small figure in the background, arms dangling, head cocked unnaturally to the side, eyes white. He hadn't seen her in person, only on the developed film. Within 48 hours, he went missing. His camera was found at the base of an abandoned well with every image burned into the film except that one. That frame had been duplicated, same shot over and over, 36 times, burned into the negatives. The strangest detail, his passport had been sliced into pieces with child-sized scissors. Back in the US, the phenomenon took on a new shape. It wasn't just sightings anymore. It was sound, subtle, inaudible to some, unbearable to others, a high-frequency whine, like a scream pitched beyond hearing. People reported migraines, spontaneous nosebleeds, paranoia. Audiologists had no explanation, but those who heard it, longer than a few hours, always said the same thing. "She's humming." The hum wasn't random, it followed a pattern, a nursery rhyme that didn't exist in any record, just 6 notes, over and over, a psychic from Arizona trying to decipher. The frequency through EVP techniques claimed she received a message encoded in the hum. Her live recording, broadcast on an underground paranormal site, ended abruptly. Before it cut out, she whispered, "It's a prayer, but backwards, a lullaby for the damned." She was never seen again. Her apartment was found filled with dolls, none of which she had owned before, all with button eyes, all arranged in a circle, facing the center where a tape recorder spun with no tape inside. The recording has never been recovered. That was the pattern. Anyone who got too close either vanished, went mad, or suffered something worse, being left behind, knowing she was still coming. For the rest of us, it was the waiting, the slow erosion of safety, mirrors becoming hazards, dolls becoming threats, whispers in vents, scratches on window panes at 3:03 a.m. and always the knowledge that if you acknowledged her even in thought, she'd draw closer. It was never about belief. It was about attention. That's what they missed in the early years. She didn't need worship. She didn't want fear. She only needed focus. And we gave it to her. Every article, every repost, every movie reference, every video titled Annabelle Explained or The Real Doll Behind the Horror. It fed her, gave her routes to follow. Roads paved in bandwidth and obsession, and now she's everywhere, not just in one doll, not just in one story. She is the story. The moment a new viewer engages, the moment they share or comment or joke about her online, that's the moment she steps through. She isn't behind glass anymore. She's behind the screen. And if you're still watching, still listening, still thinking about her, she's watching you back. Because that's the truth. That's the terrifying reality no one wants to admit. We don't contain evil in boxes anymore. We stream it, we package it in thumbnails and SEO tags. We make it bingeable, and she knows that. She's learning, adapting. Every post about her draws her map wider. Every whisper of her name gives her another thread to pull. It was never just about escape, it was about expansion. And we helped her. We did this. You did this. And now, if she's with you, if you've felt her watching, if you've noticed shadows where there shouldn't be any, don't speak. Don't ask questions. Don't try to document. Silence is your only shield. Your voice is the invitation. She rides it like a current. And if you're still here, still watching, still listening, turn this off now. Delete it. Forget it. Because the only way to end this story is to stop telling it.